In 2006, something strange happened. To most people, it barely registered. Another aircraft retired, another line item crossed off a Pentagon spreadsheet. But to pilots, engineers, and aviation enthusiasts, it felt like a funeral. That year, the United States Navy officially retired the F-14 Tomcat, an aircraft that had ruled the skies for more than 30 years, an aircraft that defined an era, and an aircraft that, to this day, still looks like the future. When the Tomcat was finally grounded, people assumed the usual would happen. The jets would be parked in the desert, mothballed, stripped for parts, maybe even sold to friendly nations. After all, that's what normally happens. Except, that's not what happened. Instead, the Navy did something unprecedented. They destroyed them. All of them. The last F-14s weren't stored, they weren't sold, they weren't even carefully dismantled. They were shredded, reduced to scrap metal. So the obvious question is, why? Why would the United States deliberately erase one of the most capable fighter aircraft ever built? To understand that, we need to go back a bit, not to 2006, not even to the Cold War. We need to go back to the 1960s. In the 60s, the US Navy had a problem. Its primary fighter, the F-4 Phantom II, was powerful, fast, and heavily armed, but it had limits. New threats were emerging. Faster bombers, longer-range missiles, and looming in the background, the possibility of large-scale naval combat with the Soviet Union. The Navy needed something new, something bigger and smarter. Something that could see the enemy before the enemy ever saw it. In 1970, Grumman answered the call. What they delivered was unlike anything else in the sky. The F-14 Tomcat. From the beginning, it was ambitious, almost reckless. Variable sweep wings that moved in flight, automatically adjusting for speed and altitude. A massive radar system designed to track entire formations at once. And a weapons load built around one terrifying idea: kill the enemy before they ever get close. The Tomcat was not meant to dogfight. It was meant to dominate. The wings were the first thing people noticed. They swept forward for takeoff and landing, swept back for high-speed flight. Watching an F-14 move through the air felt like watching a living machine adapt in real time. Here's something you need to quickly know. Today's video is sponsored by Abacus.ai. Imagine having access to all the world's most powerful AI tools in one place. With Abacus.ai's Chat LLM, you can use models like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Grok, DeepSeek, and more, all from a single platform. Just visit chatllm.abacus.ai, and their Smart Route LLM automatically picks the best AI model for whatever you're doing. You can generate images, create videos, build professional presentations, and even humanize AI-generated text so that it sounds natural. There's also the powerful Abacus AI Deep Agent, which can help you build websites, apps, and AI tools. And instead of paying for multiple AI subscriptions, it's just $10 a month. Try it now by visiting chatllm.abacus.ai or click the link in the description and pinned comment. During testing, engineers discovered something a bit unsettling. The aircraft could actually fly with one wing swept forward and the other swept back. It wasn't supposed to do that, but it could. That alone tells you something about how overbuilt the Tomcat really was. Power came from two massive turbofan engines, either Pratt & Whitney or General Electric, depending on the variant, each producing well over 20,000 pounds of thrust. Together, they pushed the Tomcat past Mach 2 at altitude. It was fast, heavy, and very, very expensive. Each aircraft cost tens of millions of dollars, and that was before maintenance, before training, before spare parts. But cost wasn't the point. Capability was. What truly made the F-14 dangerous wasn't its speed or its wings, it was its eyes. The Tomcat's radar could track 24 targets at once, hundreds of miles away. At a time when most fighters struggled to deal with one or two, the F-14 could manage an entire air battle by itself. And then there was the missile, the AIM-54 Phoenix. This is a weapon designed for one purpose: destroy enemy aircraft from extreme range. Over 100 miles. The Tomcat could carry 6 of them, and if needed, fire all 6 at once. 6 missiles, 6 targets, 1 aircraft. That combination, radar, missile, and platform, was unprecedented. Even decades later, it remains rare. If things got closer, the Tomcat still had options: Sparrow missiles, Sidewinders, and a built-in 20mm cannon for when the fight got personal. This wasn't just a fighter, it was a system. The F-14 entered service in the early 1970s. It flew patrols during the final days of the Vietnam War, but didn't see combat there. Its real role came later. Throughout the late 1970s and 80s, the Tomcat was the Navy's primary air superiority fighter. It flew over the Mediterranean, over Libya. It stared down Soviet aircraft across cold stretches of ocean. Later, it would fight over Iraq during the Gulf War. And when its air-to-air dominance became less relevant, the Tomcat adapted again, modified into so-called bombcats. It dropped precision weapons over Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Few aircraft reinvent themselves that successfully. And then there was the movie. In 1986, Top Gun turned the F-14 into a cultural icon. Overnight, it became the jet. The shape, the sound, the fantasy. For a generation, the Tomcat wasn't just a weapon, it was aviation itself. Production ended in 1991. By the early 2000s, the Navy was ready to move on. Maintenance was expensive, the aircraft was complex, and newer fighters like the FA-18 promised similar capability with less hassle. So in 2006, the decision was made. The F-14 would be retired. At first, nothing seemed unusual, until people realized what wasn't happening. Tomcats weren't being mothballed, they weren't being preserved, they weren't even being sold. They were being destroyed. And the reason had nothing to do with age, cost, or obsolescence. It had everything to do with Iran. When the Tomcat was first built, the United States wasn't the only country interested in it. In the 1970s, Iran, under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, was a key American ally in the Middle East. Strategically located, militarily ambitious, and eager to buy the best equipment money could buy, the U.S. agreed to sell Iran the F-14. 79 aircraft, 700 Phoenix missiles, and enough spare parts to keep them flying for a decade. Then, in 1979, everything collapsed. The Shah was overthrown, Ayatollah Khomeini took power, and Iran's relationship with the United States flipped overnight, from ally to adversary. The original deal was canceled, but not before Iran received all 79 Tomcats and roughly 200 Phoenix missiles. And despite sanctions, isolation, and a lack of official support, Iran made them work. During the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, Iranian F-14s flew combat missions. Iranian sources claimed the Tomcat shot down over 160 Iraqi aircraft. That number is probably exaggerated, but what isn't exaggerated is this: the F-14 worked. It outperformed and outranged the Iraqi MiGs, and its radar and missiles gave Iran a decisive edge in the air. That fact alone haunted American planners because it meant something uncomfortable. The Tomcat was still relevant. Fast forward to 2006, the U.S. Navy retires the F-14 and suddenly a new fear emerges. What if parts start leaking out? What if wing components, avionics, or radar systems end up in Iranian hands, or Chinese hands, or somewhere worse? Reports began surfacing that foreign buyers were exploiting gaps in military surplus security, using shell companies, middlemen, and scrap dealers. Even studying the aircraft without flying it could reveal sensitive information. So the Pentagon made a decision: no Tomcat would ever fly again. The most critical component was the wing box, the structure that allowed the wings to sweep in flight. Without it, the aircraft simply could not function. The wings wouldn't just stop moving, they could fail entirely. In 2007, every wing box was destroyed, even the ones in museums. The tooling required to manufacture new ones no longer existed. No blueprints and no production lines. That alone should have been enough. But it wasn't. To remove any remaining doubt, the final decision was made: destroy everything. 165 Tomcats were sent to Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, the Boneyard, a place where aircraft go to sleep or to die. An independent contractor was brought in. Their instructions were clear: don't dismantle them, don't preserve them, shred them. Massive industrial machines went to work. A shearing claw tore the aircraft apart, ripping away wings and fuselage. A shredder reduced what remained into twisted fragments of aluminum. The machines weighed over 100,000 pounds each, and the Tomcat never stood a chance. Some parts resisted, though. The landing gear, built to slam onto aircraft carriers again and again, had to be cut apart with specialized torches. A few non-unique components were sold abroad, nothing critical, nothing that couldn't be found on other aircraft. When it was over, one of the most iconic fighters ever built was gone. Today, only a handful of F-14s exist outside museums. All of them are in Iran. no one knows exactly how many still fly. Estimates range from a few airframes to perhaps 30. The Phoenix missiles are long gone. Spare parts are improvised, cannibalized, or fabricated in secret. In 2025, footage appeared to show Iranian F-14s destroyed in airstrikes. Whether they were operational or simply used for parts remains unclear. What is clear is this: the Tomcat didn't die because it was obsolete. It died because it was still too dangerous. By shredding the fleet, the United States ensured that no rival, no matter how determined, could ever bring the F-14 back as a fighting aircraft. A brutal end, but from a strategic standpoint, an effective one. And somewhere out there, pilots still look up at old footage of those wings sweeping back and wonder what might have been.